Thanks. A first alert update. A federal lawsuit concerning the murder of a prisoner at Green Bay Correctional Institution levels new accusations against the Wisconsin Department of Corrections and several employees of GBCI. 19-year-old Micah Laureano was killed by a cellmate in August of 2024. His family shared these pictures of Micah, who was just months away from release after serving about a 3-year sentence for robbery and battery. A Brown County judge found jury found Jackson Vogel guilty of first-degree murder with a hate crime modifier during a trial last summer. Vogel told guards he killed his cellmate because of his race and sexual orientation. An amended federal lawsuit filed this month says the two should have never shared a cell in the first place. It cites the Wisconsin DOC's own report on that murder that notes Michael Laureano as being designated as risk of victim and Jackson Vogel as risk of victimizer. These designations are part of the national standards under the Prison Rape Elimination Act, which President George W. Bush signed into federal law in 2003.
I went through that thoroughly, and it was quite shocking. There were a lot of pictures, a lot of descriptives in it, and a lot of deep informational material as far as what the inner workings of DOC and also their identified failures. And I can assure you there were a large volume, numerous failures within their own rules and restrictions.
The State Department of Justice is defending the case. It has until February to respond to this newest complaint.